just me, or does it...
Okay, folks, we are closed for the night. It's time to get home. Good night.
Thanks, Sarah.
Get home safe.
Thanks, Sarah.
Good night.
You're like a prom, you know that? You make everything around you beautiful. Good girl.
Hello, fellow mudbeards, Fromily, and anybody who's just happy that this show is so easy to Google now. Day ones know how hard it was to find. And today, I wanted to go ahead and start covering a new series for the channel, that being From. Anybody who's been a fan of the channel for a while knows that I've been referencing this show quite a bit, and I figured now's the best time to start making videos on it. So to do that, I guess we gotta ask the tried and true question, do you like mystery box shows? And to do that, I'll make some easy comparisons that might entice you on actually watching the series. If you like shows like Severance, Dark, The Walking Dead, or Yellow Jackets, you'll probably end up liking this show too. Oddly enough, despite how different thematically those shows are from each other, this show perfectly crucibles a lot of the different themes and aspects of the different narratives. So again, if that's enough for you, then go ahead and click off this video and start watching the show now. But if you need a little bit more enticing, I'll go ahead and break down some not too spoilery elements of the plot. Now again, this is a mystery box show, so even though I'll be talking about a bit of the plot introduced in season 1, just trust that there's a lot of mysteries and narrative elements that have yet to be revealed, and a lot of what makes this show so alluring is all the theories and conspiracies that surround it. So I'm just going to kind of break down the characters and the setting. To narratively set the scene, we follow a family as they're on a road trip to spend some time together, and the opening dialogue of this scene does hint at some of the conflict and tensions within the family. See, one of the first mysteries we cover throughout the first season is why this family has a bit of tension between each other. But little did the family know that this small little bit of tension between each other would be much more preferable to the hellhole they would inevitably find themselves in. See, as the family's driving down the road, they end up coming across a tree that's fallen over. They're very curious how this happened because there's no other trees in the area that happen to fall with it. You can also see that it wasn't cut down. As the family begins to speculate what happened, a lot of crows or ravens begin to loom over them. This ends up making them uneasy, so they decide to continue on their vacation. They end up coming across a small rinky-dink town, and it seems the townsfolk are all gathered for some sort of ceremony and or funeral. They decide to stop and ask for some directions, but oddly enough, most of the townsfolk seem to ignore them. Everyone but the town sheriff, who despite seeming a little off, seems to point them in the right direction. So, despite being weirded out, the family decides to keep going. The only odd part is, after driving for a few minutes, they end up back in the same town. This obviously elevates some of the pre-existing tensions between the family, but they continue to try to find out where they are, but every time they continue driving out of the town, they end up finding themselves back in, never really encountering the same tree again. And at some point, when tensions are at their highest, another car comes veering down the road. And it's very obvious right away that something is wrong with the driver, almost heading into a full-on collision. The RV the family was driving in ends up veering off of the road. Everyone seemingly alive and okay, just a little dazed, besides the youngest son, Ethan, who now has a table leg pierced through his own. But not to fear, because it turns out one of the drivers of the other car ended up running back to town and grabbing the sheriff and some of his friends. They end up encountering the family and offering their assistance, but the family, while focusing on getting everybody safe, keep hearing them mention something about it's getting dark and they gotta get back to town. However, the family's priorities are obviously to focus on actually getting themselves safe. These scenes really emphasize some of the most interesting aspects of the show for me, which is the realistic acting. See, the way the show is framed and its setting makes it seem a little bit mystical and a little bit like a storybook. However, when it comes to the characters and their actual responses, it's very grounded and very real. They end up being able to help some of the family, but in order to help the youngest son, the sheriff and the nurse will have to stay behind with the dad. The sheriff sending his deputy and the rest of the family back to town, all while constantly referencing how they need to get things ready before dark. If the family wasn't so taken back by the series of events, they would have had more questions about what they keep referencing, but at this time, they know they just have to move. So the sun begins to set and the deputy brings the rest of the family back to town, but they end up driving over a spike trap, Turns out the sheriff and the deputy had set this up so the family in the RV would have stopped driving. Ideally, they would have been able to keep them from driving and explain things further, but having forgotten that they set such a trap, they realize they need to get moving before nighttime officially dawns. The family, still being confused and frantic why they're so worried, are warned not to trust anybody and to keep moving no matter what they hear. It cuts back to the sheriff, the dad, and the youngest son being helped by the nurse inside of the RV. The sheriff had set up blankets and tarps all around the entrances and exits of the RV, and then set a strange looking totem hanging from one of the mirrors. The dad, finally having time to breathe, starts to ask what exactly is going on and why they're so afraid, and before they can fully clarify, they hear oncoming noises from the woods at night. The sheriff goes to check the window and lets everybody know that they're here. And as he looks outside, figures making otherworldly noises begin to approach the vehicle. The only interesting bit is one looks like a bride, one looks like a milkman, one looks like an old lady, but whatever sounds they're making are not human. That pretty much sums up some of the basic plot of the very first episode of the series, but I did definitely leave out some elements that I think you'll still enjoy hopping into the series brand new. So I'll go ahead and break down the setting, some of the characters, and what's going on without going too into detail on the plot. See, it turns out that all the residents of this town are trapped, and no matter what they do, they can't leave. But it only gets worse. This town being a strange combination of pieces and buildings that the more you look at it and pay attention, the more you question how all these things got put together. Like a motel sign with no motel. Like a car being driven in a pool. But things only get worse, because every time night comes around, monsters come from the woods seeking to kill. The only thing is, they look and act just like people. Very interestingly enough, they'll approach you with a hand drawn and a smile on their face. They're very kind and very friendly. However, if you close the distance and give them the time of day or night, they will end up making your life a living hell. The things these creatures do to these people go beyond simply scratching them or trying to eat them. They don't even eat them in the first place. And as the series progresses, we still have not had a full answer on what the creatures are, but there's a lot of awesome theory videos and speculation as to where they came from and what they're doing. I highly recommend checking some of them out. Point is, the only thing keeping these people safe at night is being able to hide inside of a structure and hang one of those talismans. For whatever reason, these talismans seem to repel the creatures. So now this is just sort of how the residents live, day to day and locking themselves away at night. See, in this area you have a town and you have a house. This house is deemed Colony House, where a lot of people live together and share supplies, living for today because they don't know if tomorrow's guaranteed. And then you have the town, where people do live in separate homes but are genuinely working on figuring out a way out, while maintaining a structure of the old society they used to live in. And yeah, the ideologies of these two different areas do come into conflict sometimes throughout the story, but you'll have to watch and see exactly how that plays out. But let's go ahead and break down some of the characters and archetypes we're introduced to in the very first season. And I won't go too into spoilers for where some of these character directions go, but just know that whether it's intentional or not, this town does transform these characters in pretty significant ways. But to begin, we'll start with none other but the man of the hour, Sheriff Boyd himself. See, being a military vet, when he first arrived to town, he became the self-appointed sheriff. A lot of people were scared and wondering what to do, and I won't spoil anything, but he ends up taking action and earning the respect and admiration of a lot of the townsfolk. Boyd is a character who throughout the story holds on to the steadfast ideal that he will not be broken by this horrible nightmare. That all the horrific things that has happened to him and his family won't turn him into something he's not. And oddly enough, the way this town responds to that idealism is indicative of what the town's really after. The town itself throughout the story almost challenges that bold claim that the sheriff had made. So his story kind of encompasses the will humans can have and how much they can actually endure facing constant nightmares. But let's go ahead and move on to some closely related characters of his and my personal parents, Ellis and Fatima. These two characters can be seen as sort of the heart of the show, both of them being residents of the Colony House and each having some pretty tragic backstories. And while Fatima's is only touched upon in one scene, Ellis's is a big part of Sheriff Boyd's story as well. And throughout the series, Ellis and Fatima's relationship is the best representation of true love in a nightmare. We get to see them build each other up and support each other through all these oncoming events that they're going to face. And in every good story, you need a relationship like that. But another type of relationship you like is the one you root for, the will they, won't they, and this series does have one of those as well. See, the deputy and the nurse, both of which I mentioned earlier, do have some romantic tensions within each other. Throughout the series, you can see they're very much flirty with each other, but do have a very significant bond and friendship as well. The only thing holding them back from truly getting together is the fact that the nurse does have a fiance back in the real world, and she doesn't want to give up hope just yet that she could make it back to her future wife. But she also has to struggle with the concept of if she ever will even make it back. And that romantic tension is pretty interesting to watch throughout the story. Then you have Donna. She is another leadership figure in this weird little from town they all live in. However, she represents leadership in the colony house. And her character is one of constant speculation. I won't go into why, but it is interesting to watch how much she truly cares for the people around her. She's also very blunt and very tough. And she provides a good contrast to Boyd's ideologies. Another good contrast to Boyd's ideologies is Father Khatri, who, while being religious, is more of a supportive figure for Boyd and everything he has to endure. When it comes to making tough decisions or figuring things out, Father Khatri isn't always spewing the gospel at him, but he is spewing some of the biggest takeaways from the gospel and how it can be necessary for an area like this. And his character is also very interesting, because it not only tackles the idea of having a darker past and choosing priesthood instead, but also finding spirituality in a place of nightmares, and how confusing fear and godly entities can actually be. But let's go ahead and move on to who was in the other vehicle when the Matthews family had crashed. In the other vehicle was a character named Jade, and his friend Tommy, but Jade is one of the main characters we'll focus on here. Jade is pretty much Iron Man if he was stuck in a hellhole. Billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, and while everyone else in town is acting very dramatic and very much like they're part of a TV show, Jade is a very big source of comedic relief in the fact that he calls everybody out for whatever behaviors they're displaying. Let alone the fact that throughout the story, he is one of the only characters who is constantly trying to figure out the mysteries of the story. So many people are letting themselves adapt and succumb to whatever world they live in and environment surrounds them simply because it's easier than actually trying to figure things out. A lot of them arguing that it will break your own mind. But Jade takes this concept and chucks it out the window. His mind is an iron fortress, and to break it would be almost impossible. He's the one that designs the maze, not the rat that gets caught in it. So seeing his story and how hard he tries to figure out and how he bounces back and forth between giving up and desperately being on the verge of figuring it out is very, very interesting. But now, let's move on to a character named Victor. He is one of the most pivotal characters throughout the story, and in the first season, you'll see he's mostly a point of mystery and kind of in the background for the most part. Despite his significant on-screen presence, you don't really piece together a lot of what he's talking about until the series begins to move forward. Victor's an interesting character because he is the longest living resident of the town. And his backstory and the things he's seen over the years he's been there is a key aspect of how the show actually plays out. You'll be introduced in the very first few episodes some big mystery elements of Victor's backstory. And for the final character on this list, we have Kevin. Who's Kevin, you may ask? Well, he's the one character in the show that actually has the power to get everyone home, and we'll get to see his smarts, wit, and talent be put to full use within the first season of the show. But I won't go into too many spoilers here. And yes, I could go way more into these characters, and maybe I'll actually make a series of videos breaking down each character individually, but for right now, I just kind of want to give you an idea of the story and how it's set up. So for those who just skipped ahead and wanted to see the biggest reasons for why you should watch the show, here's the biggest questions. Is anything they're seeing real? Who's running the program there, and how do they go home? Some of the most fun elements of the show are that any threat they face could be literally anything. And while I did mention monsters earlier that look like people, the things that emerge from those woods, whether they be inanimate objects or full-on humongous creatures, put a lot of these characters through absolute hell. Coupled with the fact that survivability in this town for these characters isn't guaranteed, and we do lose people along the way. There's also this looming oncoming threat that almost the entire town could get wiped out, but I won't go into that. What's also awesome about the show is its mysterious elements. It's from the creators of Lost, so while a lot of these mysteries could be seen as absolute randomness for the sake of being narratively interesting, it is awesome to go back and see how much of it was set up from the beginning. Seeing some of the threats they face in Season 3, but going back to rewatch Season 1, which I'm doing right now, is super awesome to watch. especially considering the opening title sequence does hint at some of the entities they will be facing throughout the story. Couple all this with the fact that, like any good mystery box show, we still haven't put all the pieces together. And while it is a 5-season planned show, and season 3 did give us some big reveals, keep in mind that it is very character focused. The characters and their decisions very much drive the plot and very much take up a lot of the screen time. That being said, you know the dynamics between the characters are going to be fluctuating constantly. Let alone the fact that at any point, new people of any sort of background and history can arrive to this town. Let alone any quantity. Some people arrive by themselves in a bike, and like we saw with the Matthews family, some people arrive in an RV with multiple people. So yes, if you like character-driven stories with stakes and consequences, if you like mysterious elements that keep you guessing what could be going on, and you like shows with spiritual aspects as well as lore and ancient histories, then I highly recommend watching From. Because oh boy, this show when it first came out was very hidden. Not a lot of people knew about it. Season 2 it got a little bit more viewers, and Season 3 its viewership has only skyrocketed. Just like the series Lost, I guarantee you'll end up hearing about this show from one of your friends at some point in the future. That being said, yes, you should watch From on MGM or wherever you can. Point is, stellar acting, awesome story, intriguing mysteries, and a very active fan base known as the Fromily. But let me know what you think. If you haven't seen it, are you gonna check it out? If you have seen it, did this video kind of help break it down? If so, send it to your friends. And I do plan on making a lot of videos for this series, whether it be revisiting the title sequences or season 1 or making theory videos altogether. I'm just really glad I gave the show a chance years ago, and I'm hoping this video helps some others too as well. That being said, thank you for watching, appreciate the support, a like and subscribe really helps, and if you like From theory videos, revisitings, or analytical breakdowns, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe on this video, and it will sort of be indicative for me of what I should work on next. That being said, that's been MudLuv, appreciate you all watching, and remember, if you're driving down and you see a tree in the road, you're already screwed.